Imagine walking into a room of like 100 CEOs across a bunch of different industries. Today, right now, 75 of those leaders are actively losing sleep because their companies are completely stalled out.
Yeah, it's pretty staggering when you look at it.
Right. I mean, they have the capital, they have the market strategy, and the demand for their product is, through the roof. But they literally cannot move forward. And not because of inflation and not because of some supply chain bottleneck. They are stalled because they actually just cannot find enough humans to keep the lights on.
Exactly. It's this invisible crisis.
Yeah, an invisible crisis that is quietly capping global economic growth. And if you are listening to this right now, it is directly impacting how you work, how you hire, and, well, how your company survives the next decade. So welcome to today's deep dive, where we are going to explore why the modern workforce seems to have just vanished.
The sheer scale of this problem, it really forces us to completely throw out the old assumptions about hiring. For decades, companies operated under this premise that, well, there was always a surplus of talent, right? And the employer just held all the leverage.
They held all the cards.
Exactly. But that leverage is gone. It's just gone. The landscape we're looking at today requires a fundamental restructuring of how businesses operate, how they recruit, and even how they define what a qualified worker actually is.
And to figure out how to navigate that, we are drawing on a really insightful piece of source material today from StellaPop. They're experts specializing in recruiting and management strategy. The piece is titled Talent Shortage, Fighting for Long-Term Qualified Recruiting Candidates. Okay, let's unpack this.
Yeah, there's a lot to dig into here.
There really is. Our mission for this deep dive is to decode the actual mechanics behind this massive shortage, pinpoint the unconventional qualities that actually matter in modern hire, and explore the magnetic strategies businesses must deploy if they want to stop bleeding talent and, start attracting it.
To do that, we really have to start with the data, because we cannot solve a structural problem if we treat it like it's just a temporary inconvenience.
Right, like, oh, it's just a bad quarter.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
When people hear worker shortage, the instinct is to just brush it off and say, oh, well, the labor market always fluctuates. But the numbers from the Manpower Group survey that are highlighted in our source, they show a really terrifying acceleration.
How bad are we talking?
Well, back in 2018, about 45% of employers worldwide reported struggling to fill job roles.
Which is, that's high, but it's manageable. Like, you can still run a business if you're slightly understaffed in a few departments.
Right. It's a hurdle, but not a wall. By 2019, that number crept up to 54%.
Okay, getting worse.
But then fast forward to 2024, and a staggering 75% of employers globally cannot find the people they need.
Wait, really? 3 out of every 4 companies?
3 out of 4. And the data shows this is pervasive across every single industry, from healthcare to tech to, heavy manufacturing.
Wow. A jump from 45 to 75% in just a few years isn't a fluctuation. It's a fracture. So let's look at the mechanics of what actually broke here. Because the source points to 4 root causes driving this, right?
Yeah, 4 main drivers.
The first one is a rapidly widening skill gap. The second is shifting demographics. Essentially, older populations in developed countries are aging out of the workforce and retiring.
Let's actually pause on those first 2 because they compound each other. It's not just that people are retiring. It's that the people retiring held very senior, highly specialized roles. And the incoming workforce just hasn't had the time or the mentorship, really, to acquire those specific capabilities.
You get this totally hollowed out middle layer of the workforce.
Exactly. And then you add to that the third cause, which is unequal educational opportunities. We rely so heavily on traditional 4-year degrees as a proxy for competence, but access to those degrees and access to quality vocational training, it's highly variable.
Yeah, so by insisting on these very specific educational pedigrees, companies are basically artificially choking their own supply lines.
That's spot on. Which leads right into the fourth cause from the source, which is the massive demand for new skills driven by digital acceleration.
Okay, but I want to push back on that a little bit, on the idea that technology moving too fast is the core problem here. Because if we look at how businesses hire, it feels like we're trying to buy statting paper maps in an era of live GPS, Like, is the rapid evolution of tech the real issue, or is it just our rigid response to it?
That's a great point. What's fascinating here is that the biggest gaps are hyper-focused in areas where the target is constantly moving. We're talking data analysis, cybersecurity, artificial intelligence.
Right, fields that change every 6 months.
Exactly. The technology itself is just a tool. The real friction comes from companies trying to hire for a static snapshot of skills. I mean, if you hire someone solely because they hold a certification in a software platform released in 2023, you are hiring for an expiration date.
Because within 2 years, that platform is either going to be obsolete or totally unrecognizable.
Yeah. The source makes it very clear that the hiring philosophy has to shift entirely away from what do you know right now to how efficiently can you learn what we need you to know tomorrow.
You're hiring for cognitive velocity, essentially. Which, I mean, that requires a massive pivot in how we actually define a good candidate.
A total paradigm shift.
So if the resume full of hard skills is, losing its value, what are the actual traits that indicate a high potential hire? What does potential actually look like on paper?
Well, the Stella Pop article isolates 5 core golden qualities that businesses absolutely must start screening for. And the first one is adaptability.
Okay, adaptability.
But it's important to understand the mechanics of this trait because it's not just about, being okay with a flexible schedule. The source references the Clifton Strengths framework.
Oh, yeah, I've heard that.
Yeah, so in that framework, adaptability is defined as someone who prefers to go with the flow. They take things as they come, and they discover the future one day at a time.
Okay, so it's a cognitive preference for living in the now, meaning they don't just panic when the blueprint changes halfway through a project.
Exactly. While other employees might freeze or demand to stick to a plan that is clearly failing, highly adaptable people just pivot seamlessly. They are the ones who build strong relationships and keep a team grounded during constant upheaval.
Here's where it gets really interesting. The source lists critical thinking as the second quality, which is the ability to analyze complex situations and develop workable solutions. But the text specifically notes that critical thinking, quote, once upon a time was taught in schools. And then it questions whether that is still true today, saying it's highly debatable.
Yeah, that line is pretty striking.
It really stands out. I mean, are we basically acting as our own universities now, like having to hunt for baseline cognitive traits that the traditional education system is just missing?
It's a very real burden shifting onto employers right now, yeah. If a degree no longer guarantees that a candidate knows how to deconstruct a problem, synthesize information, and actually propose a viable solution, then what's the point of the degree? Right. Hiring managers have to test for that raw aptitude themselves during the interview process. You can't just check a box on a resume anymore. You have to put candidates in scenario-based discussions to see how their brain actually works in real time.
Which honestly sounds exhausting for HR, but absolutely necessary. And I'm guessing that ties directly into the third and fourth qualities?
It does. Those are emotional intelligence, or EQ, and resilience.
Now, these are traits that you definitely don't get a certificate in. How is the source defining them in a way that businesses can actually, measure and utilize?
So, emotional intelligence, in this context, is the skill of managing your own emotional responses while simultaneously understanding and guiding the emotions of your colleagues or clients.
Okay, so reading the room and regulating yourself.
Exactly. It is the absolute bedrock of team peace, harmony, productivity, and negotiation. And then resilience is the corresponding internal trait. That's the capacity to bounce back rapidly from setbacks without losing momentum on your goals.
Now, if you're a hiring manager listening to this, you might be thinking, sure, those are nice, soft skills to have. But it sounds like the source is framing these not as nice to haves, but as critical survival mechanisms.
Oh, they are the ultimate assets, hands down. Because during periods of economic uncertainty or major organizational restructuring, a team lacking EQ and resilience will fracture.
They'll just break under the pressure.
Exactly. Communication breaks down, infighting starts, productivity just halts. The highly resilient, high EQ employee is the person who diffuses the tension in a meeting when a major client pulls out. They refocus the group and immediately start ideating a recovery plan. They literally prevent the structural collapse of the team.
Wow. Okay, and rounding out these 5 qualities is being tech savvy. But based on how the source explains the digital acceleration problem earlier, being tech savvy can't just mean knowing how to use the company's current software suite, right?
No, it doesn't. It means possessing an inherent curiosity and a total lack of fear regarding digital tools.
Oh, I like that. A lack of fear.
Yeah, a tech-savvy candidate actively seeks out ways to use new platforms to enhance innovation. They want to eliminate friction in their daily workflow. They're the ones who want to test the new AI tool to see if it can automate a weekly report so they can spend that time on actual strategy. They are internal innovators.
Okay, so we've mapped out the ideal modern profile. We want adaptable, critical thinking, resilient, high EQ, tech-curious problem solvers. That sounds incredible. But the reality is that 75% of the companies on Earth are hunting for these exact same people.
Yeah, it's fiercely competitive.
Right. We can't all hire the same 10 rock stars, so knowing who we want is only half the battle. How does a company actually become a magnet for this tier of talent?
By completely overhauling their employer branding and recruitment mechanisms. The source emphasizes that traditional attraction strategies are just dead.
Dead in the water.
Pretty much. If you are exclusively posting job descriptions on standard employment boards and waiting for the resumes to roll in, you are going to capture the most desperate candidates, not the most qualified. You have to look beyond the conventional talent pools. Look in niche forums, on social media.
The analogy I keep thinking of here is it's like fishing in the same overfished pond. It just isn't going to work anymore. We have to essentially build a better ecosystem, a coral reef that the fish actively want to swim into and inhabit.
I love that analogy. That's exactly it.
And one of the most unconventional tactics the source suggests for finding this talent is looking inside your own customer base, which is wild, but honestly brilliant.
It is a brilliant mechanism for bypassing the hardest parts of the recruitment process. Think about the friction involved in bringing an external hire up to speed. You have to teach them your product, your market placement, your company culture.
It takes months.
Right. But a loyal customer already understands all of that. They use your product. They know its strengths and its pain points better than some of your internal teams might.
You're practically skipping the entire culture fit screening phase. Like, if I'm a B2B software company and I notice a user at one of our client firms who constantly pushes the limits of our platform, submits highly detailed feature requests, engages on our community forums.
Why wouldn't you try to poach them?
Exactly. They already have built-in brand loyalty and enthusiasm.
And that enthusiasm is incredibly contagious within a team. But to attract that customer or any high-tier candidate, the company has to offer more than just a competitive salary. The source points out that modern job seekers, yes, they want money, but they also demand alignment on purpose and ethics.
They want to know the motivation behind the brand.
Right. If your company cannot clearly articulate its purpose beyond maximizing shareholder value, you will lose the best talent to a competitor who actually can. Alignment here really increases loyalty.
Let's talk about the operational side of that attraction, though, because the source brings up flexibility. And this is a massive debate right now. You have these stubborn CEOs demanding a return to the office 5 days a week, 9 to 5, no exceptions. If a company takes that hardline stance today, what mechanically happens to their talent pool?
They immediately trigger a brain drain. The source is unambiguous here. Remote work, flexible schedules, and work-life balance are no longer perks. They are structural staples for the modern workforce. It's non-negotiable for job satisfaction.
So if you force rigid mandates?
The first people to leave your company will be your highest performers.
Because they are the ones with options.
Precisely. The high EQ, highly adaptable rock stars we just talked about, they know their value in a market where 75% of companies are desperate for them. They want the autonomy to manage their professional and personal responsibilities efficiently.
Yeah, treating them like adults.
Right. And if you restrict that autonomy, they will simply take their cognitive velocity to a competitor who does treat them like an adult.
So flexibility is a non-negotiable. What about the candidates who have the raw potential? The EQ, the resilience, but maybe they lack a few of the hard skills required for the role. What do we do with them?
The source strongly advises treating training as a strategic investment. You broaden your talent pool immensely by offering upskilling programs, instead of waiting 6 months for the perfect candidate.
While the vacant role costs you money and burns out the rest of your team, yeah.
Exactly. Instead of doing that, you hire the candidate who is a 70% match on hard skills, but a 100% match on potential. And then you train them.
It signals to the candidate that you view them as a long-term asset, not a disposable resource. Like, ambitious people want a clear trajectory for growth.
And operationally, by upskilling your current workforce, you fill internal skill gaps without having to re-enter that brutal external market. You build the talent you need in-house. Furthermore, the source highlights that you should leverage your existing team to find new hires through referral programs.
Which makes sense mechanically. A high-performing employee isn't going to risk their own reputation by referring someone who's going to drag the team down. They essentially act as an initial filter for you.
They do. And it ensures much smoother team dynamics right out of the gate because there's already an anchor of trust and buy-in.
So what does this all mean? We've outlined the severity of the shortage, we've redefined the traits we need to look for, and explored how to restructure the hiring process to act as a magnet. But looking at the entirety of this Stellapop source material, it doesn't feel like we are talking about a bad financial quarter or a temporary hiring slump.
We aren't. It's definitely not a passing storm.
Right, it feels like permanent climate change.
That's exactly how businesses need to view it. Global demographic shifts and lightning-fast technological evolution are fundamentally permanently altering the labor market. A company cannot survive by remaining in a reactive state, panicking every time someone hands in a 2-week notice. The source argues for a transition to strategic proactivity to future-proof the business.
How does a business actually execute that, though? If the terrain is permanently shifted, what are the new pillars for stability?
The text lays out 4 strategic pillars. The first is an absolute requirement to say yes to technology. Stop listening to the AI naysayers.
Let me ask a clarifying question on that, actually. Because integrating AI usually triggers immense anxiety about mass layoffs. Is the ultimate goal here to use AI not to replace the workforce, but to make the human workforce we do have infinitely more valuable and less bogged down by busy work?
Yes. The mechanic here is enhancement, not replacement. You use AI to automate routine, repetitive tasks. By removing that busy work, you free up your human employees to do what AI cannot do.
Like exercise critical thinking and navigate complex emotional negotiations.
Exactly. Imaginative, innovative work. You maximize the return on the human potential you already have. If we connect this to the bigger picture, it's about clearing the runway so your team can actually fly the plane.
That's pillar 1. Say yes to tech. What is the second pillar?
Making inclusivity a structural priority. If we are operating in a market with a severe talent drought, alienating any segment of the population is strategic suicide. A business must actively welcome individuals from diverse backgrounds, non-traditional educational paths, and all walks of life.
You have to look where your competitors aren't looking, which flows perfectly into the third pillar we discussed earlier, adapting the work models.
Right. You cannot manage a workforce today using an operational playbook from 5 years ago. Evolve the models to fit the reality of right now.
The rigidity will just break the company.
It really will. And the final pillar brings it all together. Develop long-term recruiting plans. Companies must stop treating hiring like an emergency response. The source recommends looking 1 to 2 years ahead.
Okay, so planning scenarios and forecasting industry trends.
Yes, anticipating where your skill gaps will be before they become critical bottlenecks to stay resilient. It requires a profound psychological shift for leadership. Navigating 2024 and beyond means accepting that these challenges will always exist.
Right. Adopting a proactive, deeply adaptable mentality is what ultimately equips a brand to weather any business storm.
Precisely.
Which brings us entirely back to you listening to this deep dive. Whether you are a business leader staring down a massive project with half the team you need, or you are a learner navigating your own career path, understanding this tectonic shift is your greatest advantage in the modern economy.
It really is the ultimate advantage.
The days of relying on a rigid list of hard skills are ending. We are moving into an era that prizes the invisible architecture of a worker, their adaptability, their cognitive velocity, and their high EQ potential.
And that reality leaves us with a truly fascinating question to consider, something to really mull over.
I'm intrigued. What is it?
Well, if traditional hard skills are expiring faster than ever, and raw potential, traits like adaptability and resilience, are the new gold standard for hiring. How long until we see a complete overhaul of the traditional resume?
Oh, wow. That is a good question.
Right. Will we reach a point in the near future where listing bullet points of past jobs is seen as completely irrelevant? And instead, will we eventually use situational simulations or comprehensive EQ audits to prove our worth before ever stepping foot in an interview?
That completely flips the script. Imagine logging into a virtual crisis simulator instead of uploading a PDF to prove your worth. I mean, if companies are stalled out because they're missing the spark plugs, they're going to have to find a much better way to measure the spark. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Keep learning, keep questioning the changing world around you, and we'll catch you next time.